If for some reason they pass reconciliation budget resolution to bring that bill to the floor of the United States Senate, the $3.5 trillion bill, you got to have a quorum to pass a bill in the Senate. I would leave before I'd let that happen. So to my Republican colleagues, we may learn something from our Democratic friends in Texas when it comes to avoiding a $3.5 trillion tax and spend package. Leave town.
Wow. So you just see them leave and you're saying, fine, they were effective in not giving the Republicans a quorum. You'll do the same thing on a $3.5 trillion tax and spend.
Hey, Vice President Harris, if you think these people are heroes, well, then I expect you to show up and pat us on the back. Hell yeah, I would leave. I will use everything lawfully in my toolbox to prevent rampant inflation. A $3.5 trillion infrastructure package that's got nothing to do with infrastructure, that is a tax and spend dream of the socialist left. If it takes me not showing up to stop that, I will do it, because if we pass that bill, you're going to have inflation through the roof. And if they put legalizing illegal immigrants in that bill, you're going to have a complete run on the border. It would be throwing jet fuel on a fire called illegal immigration. It would lead to an invasion of illegal immigrants if we put amnesty in the $3.5 trillion bill. So I'd do anything I could to stop that.
Imagine if Lindsey Graham bothered to know what he was talking about before he started talking. This is the South Carolina Republican equating Texas Democrats breaking quorum to protect voting rights with Republicans' desire to pull a stunt to stop a wildly popular infrastructure bill from passing. And nowhere is his ignorance more obvious than his suggestion that Republicans take a page out of the Texas Democrats' book and break quorum to kill the infrastructure bill. And he says you gotta have a quorum to pass a bill in the Senate. But here's the thing, the quorum needed in the Senate is a simple majority, and a quorum is implied in the Senate unless someone explicitly requests a roll call. But obviously the only person who would request a roll call is a Republican, and if a Republican is there, that would mean there are 50 Democrats plus one Republican, which means, you guessed it, 51 senators, which is enough for a quorum. So either only Democrats show up and the quorum is implied since no one called the roll, or a Republican shows up to demand a roll call and there's a quorum anyway. Either way, it's a win-win. So yeah, great idea, Lindsey. Someone put that guy in charge. Now, Lindsey Graham's brilliant maneuvering aside, what's worse is the false equivalency between the Texas Democrats leaving the state to block a blatant voter suppression bill meant to prevent millions of Texans from voting, and Republicans potentially leaving to block a desperately needed infrastructure package from passing that would deliver once-in-a-generation updates to our crumbling infrastructure and mitigate the worst effects of climate change and bolster child and elder care meant to free up caretakers to participate in the economy, and so much more. It really is telling that a Republican wants to respond to a bill that would help millions of Americans in the same way that Democrats respond to a bill that would suppress voting rights for millions of regular Americans. Graham even invokes inflation. Why? Because that's one of the buzzwords that Republicans have seized upon to scare people into not supporting a bill that overwhelmingly helps the vast majority of Americans. In reality, let's talk about inflation. Let's think for a second why inflation might be just a bit higher now than a year ago. Might it be, and bear with me here, that companies that were making $0 because a global pandemic shut down business are compensating with higher prices now that the economy is open again? Might that have something to do with it? Consider too, we already know what the primary drivers of high prices are. For example, a third of inflation was due to soaring used car prices, which rose nearly 30% in the past year, given the heavy demand since people didn't want to take public transportation. Coupled with the low supply because rental companies purchased fewer cars in 2020, meaning that fewer cars were sold on the used car market. There are similar situations with furniture, bikes, and gas, all part of an economy adjusting to a post-pandemic world. A world in which suppliers will ultimately adjust and meet the demand, and then prices will normalize, but not before Republicans can run around like chickens with their heads cut off, fear-mongering that the sky is falling. If you need further proof that this represents transitory factors, just look at the rest of the world, where inflation is also picking up among much of the developed countries. And granted, while the US's inflation rate is a bit higher than our developed peers, our economies also bounce back faster than our developed peers. Why? Because once Joe Biden took office, we had one of the fastest vaccine rollouts. That meant life could go back to normal faster than it did in Europe, Japan, and other parts of the world. And look, none of this is to say that we shouldn't keep an eye on inflation, but let's not pretend that it's a choice here between allowing our infrastructure to continue crumbling and stopping inflation, because that is a false choice, and Republicans know that. And finally, Graham uses this opportunity to fearmonger about what else but immigrants. He opposes Democratic efforts to include a pathway to citizenship in the reconciliation package, which the White House supports, with Jen Psaki saying, quote, "We certainly support using the reconciliation package as a platform and a forum for moving immigration protections forward, but we'll let leaders in Congress speak to what's included." And it's not just the White House that supports this. 3/4 of all Americans also support a pathway to citizenship, including a majority of Republicans. So the fact that Lindsey Graham's best argument is still only held by a small fraction of Americans really is a testament to the fact that the Republican Party doesn't even come close to representing the will of the American people. And that really is a recurring theme in all of this. Whether it's threatening to pull a stunt to deprive Americans of an infrastructure bill that they desperately want to see passed into law, or depriving Americans of an amnesty bill that they want to see signed into law, or depriving Americans of any of a number of pieces of legislation that they want to see signed into law, you have a Republican Party representing a shrinking minority of Americans whose sole purpose is obstructing anything from passing that doesn't unilaterally help the richest Americans. Imagine if Lindsey Graham was as intent on ensuring that we had clean drinking water and paved roads as he was on passing the 2017 tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. Imagine if he was as committed to protecting this country's future generations from the devastating impacts of climate change as he was on ripping healthcare away from them. Over and over again, we have examples of Republicans doing what's in the best interest not of the American people, but themselves in the re-election campaigns. Lindsey is out for Lindsey, and threatening to walk out to ensure that this reconciliation bill doesn't pass is proof of that. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.